My name is Adrian Wren. I'm a project leader with Valley Vision. I'm a manager of the Cleaner Air Partnership, or CAP as we like to call it. And I'd like to welcome you to the second Virtual Quarterly Luncheon of 2020. Our first one was back on May 1st. We're pleased to see so much interest in the unique air quality challenges that are experienced in our rural areas. And at this time of both deep uncertainty as well as social and economic upheaval, we at CAP, we very much appreciate the continued support and interest in topics like this. So to better understand who's here in the meeting today, I know we can see see each other to some extent. Why don't you go ahead and enter your name and your affiliation in the chat box so we can see who's here. So as you're doing that, I can give some background on the Cleaner Air Partnership for those of you who may not have attended our events in the past. So CAP, the Cleaner Air Partnership, was created over 30 years ago by the Sacramento Metro Chamber and Breathe, California, Sacramento region. And Valley Vision began to manage it about 15 years ago. It's currently a broad-based partnership which includes business leaders, environmental advocates, public health nonprofits, and our region's 5 air quality management districts, all working together to help the 6-county Sacramento region protect public health and to promote economic growth by advocating for cleaner air. So huge thank you to our event sponsors, the Sac Metro Air District, Teichert, SMUD, Sutter Health, Union Pacific, the Sacramento Association of REALTORS, the Placer County Air Pollution Control District, the Yolo-Solano Air Quality Management District, and the Healthy Air Alliance. Thank you all. Quick bit of housekeeping before we dive in. This meeting is being recorded, and a link will be shared with you all early next week. Reminder, you can always find recordings of Valley Vision's events on our YouTube page. You've likely already noticed that we've switched up the format for this meeting. It's a Zoom meeting instead of a Zoom webinar. Most of you have probably experienced both formats by now, but we did receive feedback that the webinar format used in our first virtual luncheon didn't really allow for meaningful conversation. So we think this new format will allow for more interactivity. And basically the Zoom webinars are a little bit more geared toward presenters, where you ask questions and interact with them by way of a chat box. And then the Zoom meeting that we're currently in, is we can see each other's faces. It's a little bit more interactive in conversation. So sort of excited for this experiment that we'll all be sharing today. So there will be regular breakpoints for our speakers to answer your questions. If you have any questions, use the raise hand function. It's visible if you click the participants button at the bottom of your screen. Those using the Zoom app on iPhone or Android also have this option. Those calling in should dial *9, and then that'll do a raise hand icon next to your name or phone number on the participant list. There's also a chat box that you guys are already using for non-Q&A related comments and conversations. So thanks for doing that, and we'll allow for Q&A during as well as after each of the presentations. So with that, I would really like to introduce my colleague Jesse Flores, who just completed his first month as a Valley Vision Project Associate, supporting both the Cleaner Air Partnership and our Clean Economy work, as well as our workforce development projects. So Jesse, would you like to introduce yourself and share some background?
Thanks, Adrian. Hi, my name is Jesse. So I just finished my first month in Valley Vision, but before Valley Vision, I was with Sac State. Actually, I was doing a fellowship through the university, and through the fellowship I was working with the State Water Resources Control Board, and before that I was working mainly with nonprofits on environmental justice issues. So I come originally from Los Angeles, so I'm still learning the region and look forward to just hearing from everyone. And I'll be managing the back end of things, so yeah, that's my role here.
Thanks so much, Jesse. Yeah, he will be facilitating the Q&A as well. So thanks for keeping things running without a hitch. So to begin with something of an icebreaker, we have a fun Zoom poll that we hope will work for you. It may not work. If it doesn't, then that's okay. You should hopefully see a poll that just popped up, and it's just something fun. What are you eating for lunch? This is a luncheon after all, and we are not able to supply you with food items. So just trying to collect some data here, and then we will share let's give it another like 10 seconds. So yeah, curious about whether or not you're eating leftovers, or we have an other category. Maybe I don't want to know. All right, so let's end the polling, Jesse, and then share the results. Okay, so a lot of folks having leftovers today. That's totally fine. Okay, great. So let's close out of that. Great. Thank you, Jesse, and thank you everybody for participating. So let's dive into our subject matter for today: the unique air quality and transportation challenges experienced in rural areas. We'll be hearing from Yuba County Supervisor Randy Fletcher first, who also serves as the board chair for the Yuba Water Agency, followed by Luke McNeel-Caird with the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, or PCTPA. And last but not least, we'll hear from Woody Deloria with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. So Supervisor Fletcher, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and provide some context about how rural living intersects with air quality issues. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you, Adrian. So good afternoon, everyone. This is my first at speaking at a virtual lunch meeting, so feel free to eat while we're talking. It's just like around the home table. However, I think most of us are probably used to Zoom by now, so it should come pretty natural. Just a little bit about me so you have some kind of reference to my background. I'm retired from law enforcement. I have a small farm operation in Brownsville where I raise timber and chestnuts. I'm the managing owner of a small insurance brokerage firm in Marysville. Currently a county supervisor in Yuba County, of which I've been for 6 years, and a director at the Yuba Water Agency, and as mentioned, the current chairman of the board. I'm involved in over 20 committees and ad hoc committees in Yuba County. Within the next 15 minutes, I'd like to cover our recent fire and evacuation in Yuba County during the Willow Fire and the Bear Fire, a little information on the state of fire insurance in the Sierras, and then what Yuba Water Agency is doing with the forest management. And hopefully you don't mind, I'm going to be reading a lot of this. There is so much to cover and not enough time to get there. Any one of these topics I could easily spend a couple of hours on. So again, I'm just going to do a bit of reading. Please stop me if you have any questions. I'm sure Adrian will also get my attention as needed. I wanted to make one quick side note here just for your reference. On October 8th of 2017 was the Cascade Fire. The Camp Fire was November the 8th of 2018. And the Willow Fire was September the 8th of 2020. You might want to make a notation on the 8th of each month in the fall. I'm not sure what that means, but I'll be paying close attention as to what's happening on the 8th of each year. About 1 o'clock in the morning, our community was notified via red code alert of an emergency due to a fire and advised to evacuate. This notice went out to parts of Loma Rica, Browns Valley, Brownsville, and Oregon House. Within hours, several thousand residents had evacuated. 7 residents were destroyed along with many outbuildings. Depending on the exact location, some evacuees remained out of their homes until yesterday. A small number are still evacuated. As for the emergency notification, there were some technological challenges in issuing the evacuation order due to the PSPS, and we all know what that is. During a public safety power shutoff, residents in the area may not receive notification as a result of not having power. Many of the communication systems that we use today, even historically, rely directly on power to operate. When cell phone towers and landline substations are out of power, they are not able to function unless they are on backup power generation. This is the same for many of the voice over internet phones that residents rely on. The redundancy of these systems is provided by the communication carrier and has been an ongoing concern expressed by Yuba County Office of Emergency Services dating back to the early talks with the power safety shutoffs. COVID-19, this was a huge item. Sheltering prior to the fires, Yuba County OES, Health and Human Services, Public Health coordinated, collectively planned ways they could safely shelter residents in accordance with the sheltering during COVID-19 guidance provided from the CDC, American Red Cross, and Cal OES, with the guidance of the county's public health officer. Historically, the county has proudly provided evacuees, both Yuba and even Butte, with the utmost attention, care, and detail for both the displaced residents and their pets in common settings, such as the Yuba Sutter Fairground. With the presence of COVID-19 pandemic, the guidance from CDC, ARC, Cal OSHA, CDSS, and our local public health officer has been that the county should refrain from operating a shelter with common setting in order to eliminate the risk of further spreading of COVID-19 virus, or even worse, having an additional virus outbreak on top of the COVID-19 pandemic that could spread rapidly through the common shelter. The guidance refers to the placement of evacuees in hotels and with their trailers or RVs, assisting them with placement or resources in a campground or location where they can safely reside for the time being. For the Willow and North Complex fire, which was part of the Bear Fire, OES has partnered with the American Red Cross in an effort to best assist our residents with placement in hotels through ARC's hotel voucher program. And while this has been beneficial, it should be noted that this non-common sheltering approach has provided us significant challenges. Available hotels and campgrounds were very limited during the time due to vacation times and the fact that some of them were in the fire zone. We ended up placing evacuees in 6 neighboring counties. We also provide sheltering for pets, and as they're placed in the other hotels and campgrounds, not always their pet went with them, but were left at a different location. That created for additional stress for both the pets and the owners. Due to the geographic spread of evacuees placed in hotels or campgrounds, another challenge that we have experienced is the hindrance of access to immediate resources. Whereas in the common setting of distribution of resources or centralized, this has been a problem to provide food and additional accommodations for our evacuees. But many of the counties were using the COVID-19 guidance, and that created another problem with smoke conditions. A bit of a side item for the smoke. So as reported by Chris Brown to our board here during that time zone, on September the 12th at 7 o'clock, I received an email from Chris that said the temporary facility at Bullard's Bar that recorded the amount of smoke for a 4-hour period, there were 800 micrograms per cubic meter of smoke. 800. The highest reading was 1,112 micrograms per cubic meter for an hour. Now, Cal OSHA recommends that anything over 55 micrograms per cubic meter is unhealthy and you need to wear a mask. I can tell you personally, at my house in the foothills, not too far from this testing, if you walked outside, you could taste it. You were inundated in it. I have a fairly tight, fairly recently built home that we had smoke on the inside. I had 2 filter systems running around the clock to try to keep the air clean. So the density of this smoke hard to put a feel on it, but it was very uncomfortable for anybody in the foothills. Of course, now I've lost my place. Current incident information is critical when you're talking about communication with the public. It was a challenge getting out information when people were in different locations. They didn't have good communication, and we struggled with keeping in touch with our community. Very much of a challenge. Again, another side note to this was during the night of the fire, I responded. Instead of going downhill, I went to the fire source. And what I found personally, I had almost no communication with OES because of the main roads. There is no communication. We have no cell service. So not only was I a bit in the dark, you can imagine everyone that was traveling about trying to evacuate that night, they had no communication. That continues to be a challenge for the upper foothills and something that we are working on as best we can. But I'll tell you, it is a huge challenge today. Adrian,
Randy.
if I got, yes.
So Chris Brown, the Air Pollution Control Officer for Yuba and Sutter counties, shared a graphic, and it looks like it's a 24-hour average of air quality over that period. And I think I might share my screen, but in case Chris wants to just briefly, provide some more context on that, just want to make sure he has the opportunity too.
And if he's on here, please.
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt, Randy. I was sharing. I was just sharing the chart of what we saw at Bullard's Bar, and the numbers are a little different here because this is a 24-hour average. But Randy was talking about instantaneous readings, but 530 for a 24-hour average is roughly 10 times the federal standard. That was bad. Very bad. And what struck me about this event, as opposed to every other event I've been through, is the length of time that it went on, and it's still going on. There's still smoke impacts up there in the foothills, and to a lesser degree on the valley floor.
Right, not as bad as it was. I can tell you, I actually see blue skies today. I'm excited. I thought I lost them permanently, so. I see blue, and I'm really excited. So any questions on that piece of it? And again, we're on such a tight schedule here that I'm going to move from this topic to the next topic, but any questions? Finally, the fire technically is still ongoing around Fordstown. We have lifted all of the evacuations with the exception of directly adjacent to Fordstown, and hopefully over the next day, if we don't have too much wind or too much heat or too many issues, they will have that fire out and everyone should be able to return. But the concern, of course, now is that PG&E has sent out another PSPS notice. I've been in touch with AT&T this morning to make sure that their backup systems for their communication are functional. They have generators, batteries, and hopefully if there's any problems under this one, there will be communication for the red code alert. No other questions? Let me move to something that's near and dear to my world, which is insurance. So some years ago, we could see what was happening in the foothills, that insurance companies were getting very sensitive to where you lived by zip codes. They started putting you into clusters, and if you were in that cluster and you wanted to buy insurance, the answer was no, they're not interested. It really came home during 2017 and 2018. And as a result, I do have a chart. I probably can't get it on, you can't see it, but I'll give you the real numbers. Between 1991 And 2016, the average annual profit to insurance companies in the state of California was $390 million. So during that time period, they made a profit of $10 billion from 91 to 2016. From 2017 to 2018, they lost $20 billion. So in 2 years, not only did they lose everything they made, they lost another $10 billion. Now, any one of us that wanted to start an insurance company, we probably wouldn't want to start it in the foothills knowing that, wait a minute, for every dollar I put in, I'm going to lose $2. How many takers can I get? Not many. So of the ones that were left behind, let me give you a few basic numbers so you get a sense of, I don't know where everyone lives out of this meeting, but before the fires and before the cancellations, I can tell you an average homeowner policy, full package, with all the bells and whistles on an average price home of $300,000, had a premium of about $1,471 per year. $1,471. After the fires and the insurance companies, the bulk of the preferred companies said, we're not interested. Then we went to the FAIR plan, which is guaranteed by the state of California. We went from $1,471 to $2,500, so we doubled. But out of the FAIR plan policy, it's a very limited contract. So not only do you have to buy that contract to fulfill your lien holder's obligation, you also needed liability and some other perks that typically came with a preferred policy. So you could add on to that $2,500 anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. So now you're at $4,000. I could also go to the surplus lines market, where specialized companies that would in fact provide a full package company policy for you. And the average price for that same $300,000 house was now $6,059. That's for a $300,000 house. As you take on more coverage for your home, you can see what's happening. If a house is $600,000, you're now in $12,000 a year, so $1,000 a month. And that's carrying typically a $2,500 deductible. As this progressed, the number of insurance companies is actually shrinking as we speak. And you're finding some of your major carriers, whether it's AAA, State Farm, Farmers, Allstate, they're all becoming more restrictive. I'm a representative through RCRC, rural counties, cluster of agents, supervisors throughout the state. We began working on this, doing an ad hoc committee research. We spent a year and a half coming up with some potential solutions, provided it to the legislature, worked with the legislature, encouraged the legislature to pursue a couple of items, of which everything fell apart this year. Nothing happened. So by the end of this year, we are no closer to a solution than we were 2 years ago. All I can tell you is we will continue to work in that field. I have close relationships with a number of insurance companies, and there are issues, but they're open-minded in terms of how do we write it and how do we make a profit. And one of the solutions that always comes back to my plate is it starts with each and every homeowner. Each and every homeowner in the foothills needs to harden their structure. They need to move the shrubs away from their home. They need to make sure they're non-combustible. They need to give themselves space, either a different roof, different siding, different windows, and different landscaping. and then your neighbor needs to do it, and then your community needs to do it. If in fact we can get large enough clusters to do that, I do believe that the insurance industry will take a look. All of this will take time. Each one of those homeowners are going to have to look for resources financially to be able to do that. And that's going to take another set of rules that we put together. I'll stop with that really quick. Any questions? As I see them. Yep.
I have a question about, well, I guess about the hardening. Is there funding that is being considered at the state level to help homeowners do that? Or is it more of a mandate?
Prior to the pandemic, there was money to do some of this stuff. After the pandemic, the governor pulled those funds, all the funds for forest management, for supporting the public. There still is USDA dollars available. There are reverse mortgages. There's seconds that you can take. We are continuing to look at what are the options that we can help the public borrow money, grant money to get things started. But even at the very least, Adrian, if you just take a hoe and a chainsaw around your house, you need 5 feet of clearance, non-combustible around your home. Literally, almost everything needs to go. And then you need a barrier of non-combustible. Green grass, probably the cheapest way to go if you have water. It's a little more maintenance, but yet it gives you that buffer. And then you need to move out to 100 feet and eventually out to 300 feet. What you're looking for is to build a structure that if there's a fire around you and there are no fire trucks, will it survive? That's what you're after. If you have a wooden deck, you really need to consider removing your wooden deck and putting in a concrete deck. You want nothing that'll burn around your house or your house that's combustible. And then you may have a chance. And if you do that in a very large area, then a whole community potentially can survive. When you have houses next to homes that are 6, 8, 12 foot apart, that's also a problem, because once any one house goes, the wind blows, it's like a blowtorch and it blows into each house. That's why you see so many of those all in a row and they just all burn up. It's that blowtorch effect. So if you're a little more rural, you've got space, 5 acres, no one around you, or small sheds, you may have to move those, whatever it takes to get things away. The other secret to this is where you have windows, don't close your curtains. The heat penetrates through the window, catches the curtain on fire, and then the interior of your home ignites. So everything away from your windows, because that will ignite your house. All of these little points add up to, if we can survive as a community and figure that out, I'm hopeful that an insurance company will actually begin to write again, and then the competition comes back to play. Without the competition, you're going to have a problem, and that's right now, it's the FAIR Plan. We're fortunate to have the FAIR Plan, because without it, I can tell you there'd be a lot of foreclosures. And so I worked pretty closely with the FAIR Plan and the director. She and I have had lots of conversations. They're modifying their policies as a result of our conversations somewhat, but they don't want to be in competition with markets. They're there as a last resort to get through this time period until we can get insurance companies back to the table. Adrian, I don't want to run over my time. I'm watching it closely, but up to you. I can take another few minutes or wait at the end if you'd like. And
it looks like we have a couple of questions. Jesse, would you like to call on the folks who have hands raised?
Yeah, let's, we have a question from Doug Houston. You can unmute yourself. Thanks.
Thanks, Jesse. Brandy, I think you know, I've stayed and defended my home through 2 wildfires. Hardin stayed and defended the Humboldt fire in 2008, then the Camp Fire in 2018. Yep. And so I absolutely can, vouch for the hardening and for the investment to be able to actually stay and defend against a wildfire to protect one's home and one's neighbor's homes. My question for you, though, in terms of working with insurance carriers, I appreciate the idea of accessing public funds and loans. We've made the investment entirely out of our own pocket. But what's the prospect of persuading insurance carriers to incentivize this? My insurance carrier is pretty happy with the fact that their claims for our property have been very small because of our actions. So I don't know if you've given that much thought, and if not, I'd love to have that conversation with you offline.
Yeah, what's happened briefly is the insurance carrier have reinsurance markets. So everyone that I know, every insurance company, they have a reinsurance market, and it's the reinsurance market that ends up paying out a big chunk of the money that the company lost. So the reinsurance markets are telling the insurance companies, this is what you're going to do, or we won't reinsure you. So even though the insurance company is willing to talk, I have to get to the reinsurance market. I've had that discussion with the raters that came up with the formulas, and at the moment, they're not interested. So through the FAIR plan, we're going to initiate some of those models. If we can show that the FAIR plan makes money if they do it the right way, and actually give discounts if you'll do certain things, and they make money, then I can come back to the insurance companies and encourage the reinsurance markets to bring this back to the table. And it's going to take some time, but that's what's on the calendar.
And we have another question from Glenda Marsh. You can unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi. You know, this is kind of just a big picture comment, but it just seems like when you think about all of this and you think about the different income levels, renters, homeowners, et cetera, people, you know, there's lots of different people living in these areas of the state. And, you know, in the long run, you know, if there's really poor cell service, there's these issues, and there's people with different abilities financially to remain in the community and do all these things to their homes, et cetera, to be able to get insured. This is really complicated because it means that only some people will be able to move into or remain in these communities. And you know, there's just lots of stuff that requires extensive public subsidies to make it safe, to maintain communication links, to have cell service, et cetera, to have insurance, to be able to move back. And then what happens if you can't move back? I mean, I've run into fire refugees over the last couple of years here in Sacramento many times. It's very complicated.
You're absolutely right. That's why we put together the ad hoc committee through RCRC. What I was hoping is to provide other supervisors with some background of how complicated this really is. And there is no simple solution. Just to even begin on the Assembly and Senate bills, it's just a basic break into the market to work on the issues. If the insurance commissioner pushes too hard to mandate insurance companies to either write it or you have to give up your license, I've had a number of them say, we're out of California, we'll leave. That's not the solution. So there's a balance here, and we have to figure out that balance, and we have to show they can make a profit. But I really have a strong sense of you've got to start with each and every household, do the right things as Doug has done. If you've been there, you've seen it, now you know, okay, next time I'm going to do it a little differently, and it's safer, and you have that opportunity. Not everyone's going to stay behind. I'm not going to jeopardize my family to stay behind. I might stick around, and I did one time. The fire didn't reach me, but I'm willing to take a chance to a point. But when you get high winds, which is a blowtorch, behind a fire, I'm discouraged to tell you, I think you're going to die. That wind will torch you. I'm afraid that's a scenario. If it's a small fire with no wind, I think you can fight it. But you put a 50-mile-an-hour wind behind a blowtorch, I'm afraid that's not safe. And if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to come out of it. And it's only property at that point. Let it burn. I don't care. So.
We have one more question. Adrian, do you have time?
Yeah, it looks like we have a question from Susan Rainier, and then it looks like Bill Mueller wants to get in on the conversation.
Hi, Randy.
Susan, you can...
Hi, Susan.
Hi, I'm an architect, and I've designed quite a few houses up in your area.
Yes.
To talk to you from the insurance point of view of maybe the house itself being built in a more sustainable way. Doing design build with a contractor, and we're doing a small house for a teacher who's retiring from Marysville, wants to live up there. And we're doing it a slab on grade with, it's wood frame, but we are using stucco and a tile roof. But the key that I wanted to mention to you that I wondered what your thought about this from the insurance companies would be is that we're closing in the soffit of the overhangs with hardy board, which is a cementitious product. And that's sometimes where the embers go.
That's correct.
I think the tile roofs also are better because of that. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, I've heard that the fires can get so hot that the houses actually implode.
Yes.
So it's not even a matter of a spark getting on them, you know, or something. And then before I get off, I just want to say that I have written the governor about it, and people that know me know how I am about it. I want to get the freeways off the river. That's my biggest thing. But we could not evacuate around here if we wanted to. And I guess I hear what you're saying. I have a kit and everything. I'm ready to go, but I don't want to die in my car. You know, I mean, there's just been, we have gridlock now. What's it going to be for an evacuation? You know, I mean,
so let me respond to two of those really quick. And I really appreciate architects coming to the table. I would like to see landscape architects and building architects work with our planning department to assist to replace any structure that's been destroyed and any new structures that are coming. I think what you offered is in fact absolutely true. That soffit needs to be enclosed. You need the right ventilation in the attic. There are key things that they've found that are really critical. So please work with our planning department. Make sure that they have your information when they're looking for replacements. On our evacuation, the big concern I have that we are currently working on through the Fire Safe Council is trying to clean our main arteries of the brush to get people out in an evacuation. We need the ability to move lots of people quickly in a safe direction, and we are currently working in that area as we speak, which is also part of the force management that if I have time to talk, but again, I can wait till the end to make sure everyone else has appropriate time. I don't want to consume, I'm way over my limit now, Adrian, so it's up to you.
Well, why don't you go ahead with the Yuba Water Agency conversation, and then we won't take any more questions, okay? For you, at least.
Okay, all right. So let me do this as quickly as I can. The Yuba Water Force Management, we have been working on this the last few years, and it's really been at the top of my list. So at the moment, here's an ongoing project, which is 5,375 acres. We are currently involved with cleaning those acres around Dobbins, Brownsville, Challenge, Rackerby, and Oregon House. That is an ongoing right now. I've got a great deal to read, but I'm going to skip some of this and tell you that we are focused on that. The next project we took on about a year and a half ago was 15,000 acres in the Upper Tahoe National Forest. And what's critical to all of these projects is a partnership and collaboration. We can't do it alone. We need other people. We need the community to understand the situation and we need them to work with us. So the 15,000 acre project is kind of a proof of concept, and we're working with Blue Forest to find the funds, which we did, start the project, evaluate the project here in the next year. Once that project is done, we've already come together with the North Yuba Forest Partnership Program, which is consistent with 9 different entities. They're the Tahoe National Forest, the Nature Conservancy Group, South Yuba River Citizens League, National Forest Foundation, Blue Forest Conservation, Camptonville Community Partnership. And we're going to tackle 275,000 acres of the watershed surrounding Yuba Water, Bullard's Bar. That watershed is critical to our infrastructure. If there's a major fire there, it's going to impact our water reservoir. And we're trying to resolve this before it becomes a big problem. At the same time, we're working on a Camptonville biomass plant. All of these things are simultaneous. They're partnerships. There's multiple people working on it. We have limited funds to do it, but where we can, we are pursuing it. Staff is involved. Our board of directors are involved and supportive. And this is one of our largest projects next to all of our levees. As you know, the Yuba Water Agency is one of the missions is flood control, but just as important are our forests. And that's what we're focused on. Again, I'm sorry I took more time than I should have, but there you have it for the moment.
Thanks so much, Supervisor. Stay on. We will continue. Feel free to continue to add to the conversation. Very much appreciate it.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Next, I'd like to introduce Luke McNeel-Caird with the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, or PCTPA. Luke, why don't you introduce yourself and share your screen?
Sure. So as mentioned, I'm Luke McNeel-Caird. We like to go by PCTPA. We have a rather long name. And Supervisor Fletcher, I appreciate the update because I actually grew up in Clipper Mills and went to Marysville High School and was watching that area closely. So I appreciate the update and all the work you're doing up there. I'm going to share my screen here. I do have a presentation. Let me see. Adrian, can you see that? Maybe you can just nod your head if you can see it.
Works great, thanks. Okay.
Well, we've been working hard for the last 2 years on what I'll call kind of a rural urban plan. This is the Placer Sacramento Gateway Plan. I know we're kind of focused on rural topics today, but this is a plan that, and let's see if I can get to the next, sorry there we go, which was accepted by the PCTPA board back in April 22nd, 2020. And the final document can actually be viewed at www.more80choices.com. And I'm gonna kind of go through the plan with you and talk about some of the work we're doing here in Placer County in coordinating with Sacramento County. The corridor extends on Interstate 80 from Auburn. You can see that up in the top right corner there. And also from Highway 65 in Lincoln down to the city of Sacramento along Business 80, the Cap City Freeway. And there's 4 agencies that are working on this. It's the Sacramento Area Council of Governments with the Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority, of course, PCTPA, Placer County Transportation Planning Agency, and Caltrans District 3. And this is just a overview of the chapters that are included in the Gateway Plan. There were over 5,000 surveys that were collected from actual users of the corridor to help inform and guide the plan. And this figure here actually shows unoccupied seats. So as you can imagine, there's a lot of traffic on I-80 westbound, especially as you get down to the Cap City Freeway. And this is showing during the AM peak hour. And in a typical day, the corridor carries over 1 million empty seats. And of course, most of those are in cars, but you can see here also our local bus, the Capital Corridor Rail, commuter bus and the SAC RT, Sacramento Regional Transit Blue Line, also has empty seats that we could be filling. So through significant public outreach, including community meetings, there was over 150 multimodal projects that were identified and included in the plan. And these 150 projects totaled $4 billion in total costs. And most of these projects will fill gaps in the transportation system and also provide direct connections to disadvantaged communities. We did use big data, that's cell phone data. Yes, you are being tracked if you have a cell phone, and it is anonymous. I know there's privacy concerns, but we use that to analyze the projects and determine where people are going to and from, and then we prioritize the improvements. And these results, I know they're a little hard to see, but these are 2 pages that have the performance results that are included in the executive summary. The Gateway Plan will result in the number of residents and jobs within a half mile of reliable transit, going from about 100,000 people today to over 500,000 with the projects in place. And so, taking into account these performance metrics, 8 projects were identified as priorities for 2020 state grant funding application, which the 4 agencies submitted back in July. And these 8 projects that you see here, I actually have a map on the next slide, but these 8 projects will result in a 23% increase in peak hour transit, bicycle, and pedestrian trips. And of course, shifting folks from cars to those other modes is going to help improve air quality in our region. Through the plan, we were able to work with 14 agencies, including cities and counties, and we developed a regional bike network that runs along the Dry Creek that would connect to the American River Parkway in Folsom, and that's to the east. You can see it on the right side there. And then to the west, it would connect to Natomas. And so state grant funding that we just applied for would provide an undercrossing of Interstate 80 and connect east and west to each other. So a key point in building out this regional network. So this is a map that shows the 8 projects that were submitted back in July. And one of the key projects for PCTPA is the South Placer County Transit Project, which is actually going to provide half-hour transit service from Lincoln to 2 hospitals in Roseville, and then it will connect to the Watt Avenue Light Rail Station. The project also includes adding bicycle and pedestrian improvements. You can see by the dark blue line there on Watt Avenue to connect that disadvantaged community to the light rail station. The total cost of all of these 8 projects is $135 million. And as you can see on the screen, the funding request was $67 million. So now that the plan has been completed, this will allow for the 14 agencies to apply for state grants every 2 years through Senate Bill 1 gas tax funding. And for 2020, the California Transportation Commission, or the CTC, will announce project awards in December for the 8 projects I went over. And we're actually already getting started for 2022, the next funding round. We're currently working with the 14 agencies to identify the next set of priority projects. And if you'd like to stay up to date, you can enter your email at more80choices.com, and we'll be sending out some updates. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Luke. So a lot of this information was new to me in terms of the new bike trails that look like they're connecting sort of some of these rural areas with urban areas. And so I guess, yeah, thanks for going back to that. The dotted line are where the new construction is going to be. That's where there are not existing bike trails, or?
Back here. I'm trying to minimize the screen so you can see. I know I don't have quite a legend on here, but the lighter blue is what are class 1 trails. So those are off-road trails or off-street trails. So you won't have to mix with traffic. But obviously, as we get into the increase in elevation, especially up towards Auburn, it's a little more difficult to build those off-road trails. So the darker blue is class 2 bike lanes. So those will be on the road with their own separate bike lane. And so the dash is actually what is not built now, and the solid line is what is already built. So you can see there's some gaps in the system. There's been some progress, but this really, the 14 agencies look collectively to see what can we build on what we already have, the assets we already have to connect in the pieces. And so now that this is in this plan, we can incrementally build it out as we move forward. And Adrian, I think you might be on mute.
Oh, sorry. Your audio just a little scrambly, just FYI. So,
oh, sorry.
Yeah, it looks like Ralph has a question. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself, Ralph.
Yeah, I was just wondering regarding greenhouse gas emissions, what change in vehicle miles traveled might result from build out.
Build out. Well, I can tell you build out's 150 projects, $4 billion. That's a lofty goal. But I know for the 8 projects, if we look at carbon dioxide, those 8 projects would save 54,000 tons over 20 years.
Okay, Ralph, did you understand that?
A little hard to hear. Maybe I could have a chat.
Maybe turn your audio off.
Are you having a hard time, Adrian, during my presentation hearing?
No, it just started getting scrambly. But perhaps you can enter in the chat sort of the, just addressing the VMT reduction, and we can go to our next presenter and then have more of a conversation. Yeah, try unmuting and see what happens.
Did you want me to try again to answer that question, or just enter it in the chat?
Well, why don't you do it in chat? It's still a little scrambly. Sorry about that. Thank you for that presentation. And next up, we have our final presenter, Woody Deloria from the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. Welcome, Woody. Would you like to share your screen and introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, Adrian. As Adrian said, my name is Woodrow Deloria. I'm with the El Dorado County Transportation Commission. Also serve as the chair on the Rural Counties Task Force, which represents the 26 rural counties across the state of California. Let me get my screen share here. I have 3 screens, so if I'm looking all around, that's why. Let me figure this out. Let me know if you can see it okay.
Perfect, thanks.
Okay, great, thanks.
Although we see your next slide preview too. I don't know if there's a way you can do a full
okay, hold on. There we
Perfect.
Go. All right.
Thanks.
Well, thanks, Adrian. So again, Woody Deloria with El Dorado County Transportation Commission, and Adrian asked that that I provide you with a bit of a overview of what some of the challenges are and things that we're doing to deliver transportation projects that help to reduce GHG in the rural regions of Greater Sacramento. And again, just like Luke's agency, PCTPA, EDCTC is a regional transportation planning agency, standalone agency within the SACOG Metropolitan Planning Organization boundary. To set the stage, really, I thought I'd just kind of give you an overview of who we are here in El Dorado County. You'll see the table on the left on your screen is the kind of the general demographics. We're a pretty small county of just under 200,000, primarily white population, fairly heavy concentration of older residents, with 21% being 65 or older. I think a lot of folks refer to El Dorado County as Heaven's Waiting Room, so I'm sure some of you may have heard that. Median household income of about $86,000, $87,000, and the owner-occupied value, average value of the home is about $625,000. Probably of more interest to this group is the right side of this table, this slide, looking at households by commute type and pattern. You know, El Dorado County, we certainly love our single occupant vehicles here. We have, you know, more than 30% of the homes have 3 or more vehicles per household. As no surprise, as with most rural counties, our commute to work is a single occupant vehicle for the most part. Just over 77% of folks drive to work in their own vehicle. This is all obviously pre-COVID, but we do have some telecommute workers here in the county, just under 10%. Far more now, of course. Very few walk or bike to work. Just under 9% carpool, and very few, under 2% take public transit. The average commute time here in the county is about 32 minutes. We do have a pretty significant percentage of the population, over 22%, that have a commute of 45 minutes or longer. So some of the challenges to project delivery, delivering the types of projects that really help to reduce GHG. The first being the obvious topography and geography of a rural county in the foothills of the Sierra. So I threw together this for those that know, this is a Strava map that you can track your cycling or walking trips. And the map on the top is actually a cycling trip from my home to my office here in Placerville. It's only about 16 miles, but gained about 1,400 feet in elevation on that trip. And it is incredibly dangerous, very little shoulder, if any, and actually very little opportunity to construct shoulder without taking out significant amounts of rock and hillside. The more suburban or urban Strava map that I have on the bottom there is obviously not a commute trip, but a recreational cycling trip of about 35 miles. And again, over 4,000 feet in elevation gain on that trip. So not all that conducive for most cycling commuters to travel here in the foothills to work. And on average, for about every 10 miles of cycle trip or pedestrian trip for that matter, you gain about 1,000 feet in elevation here in the county. The next fairly significant challenge that we face is the land use patterns, the expansive land use patterns here in El Dorado County. You know, serving for the most part as a bedroom community to Folsom and Sacramento, and having limited employment opportunities, a large and growing percentage of the workforce commutes out of the El Dorado County each day. Much of our land use is very rural, with some pockets of suburban and urban development, but for the most part, the residential and commercial is more suburban in nature, with very little multifamily or more densely developed areas. And the map here shows for El Dorado County, a fairly densely populated area of Cameron Park. You see the bright yellow is the single family residential of Cameron Park, and the red and the gray is the commercial and industrial area along Highway 50. But most of our land uses are large lot residential, and then of course ag and open space. El Dorado County also is challenged by the nature of the corridors that we have passing through the county. So the county is a significant interregional tourism and recreation destination, and also it's very auto-centric, and that El Dorado County is bisected by State Route 49, which runs north and south, also US 50, which runs east to west. And these two routes really serve as major interregional routes to access the vast tourism and recreation opportunities, which are almost entirely done by passenger vehicle, because there's little to no transit option that currently exists. And the very nature of the tourism and recreation trip involves, outdoor recreation equipment like mountain bikes and skis, kayaks, things like that, but also trips that are agritourism focused or involve visitation to our wineries and agritourism areas like Apple Hill, where people want to go and bring home large amounts of goods or heavy goods back to their homes. This is a map from a study that we completed back in 2013 which really for the first time allowed us to quantify the volume of tourism versus residential commuter traffic coming from the Bay Area and Sacramento in El Dorado County and also going into the Tahoe Basin. Each of these pie charts represents a Bluetooth reader. And as Luke mentioned, Big Brother is watching, but it was all anonymous data that was collected. It pinged each vehicle that passed through those Bluetooth readers to allow us to do some origin and destination analysis to really parse out those tourism from resident trips. And you can see, you may be able to see, let's see here, the number 10, the pie chart in the kind of on the bottom left corner, close to the bottom left corner of the slide here. I've got my cursor over it right now, shows a tourism split on Highway 50 in Placerville of 72.5%, and that was on July 4th of 2013. So significant percentage of the traffic that we have is auto-centric and is tourism and recreation based passing through Placerville and through El Dorado County. And of course, as I think most rural counties face, the challenge of funding. And as a rural county with very limited population centers and little density, we're most challenged by the availability of funding to really support those projects and programs which help reduce vehicle emissions in a meaningful way. Much of the formula funding that we receive is based on our resident population and lane miles, which doesn't take into account the actual users of the system, or that 72.5% tourism recreation travel on the corridors. You can see in the table here, it shows the funding which could be applied to these types of GHG reducing projects that may be realized over the next 20 years. Furthermore, for those that don't know, El Dorado County continues to collect the minimum sales tax required by the state, as the county has not passed a local sales tax measure, and likely won't for some time, if ever.
Hey, Woody, quick question.
Yeah.
So the figures on your last slide about funding, I mean, does that take into account, again, does that take into account, I guess, like the effect that the COVID-19 recession has had on some of these revenues, or this is pre all of that?
No, I think I, along with many of my colleagues, have thrown out our crystal balls as of May. And this is based on a 20-year plan for our regional transportation plan pre-COVID. The local sales tax is actually coming in higher than expected. The county just received about a 12% increase. So for whatever reason, we're not seeing the impacts yet, but of course that will start to show itself soon, and we will have to adjust that accordingly. But this is all pre-COVID, doesn't take that into account. And just to back up, so this also is showing all of the potential funding that could be used for GHG reducing projects like active transportation investments or transit. It can also be used for roads and other things, which may be prioritized by the county or the city of Placerville over those GHG reducing projects, things like maintenance and other things that are maybe a higher priority. So what have we done? I've kind of laid out the stage for kind of what we're up against as a rural county trying to deliver these types of projects. What have we really done? So over the past decade, EDCTC, and actually more than the past decade, has developed a number of active transportation and transit plans, studies and maps and things, some of which include the Placerville and Humboldt Rise transportation plans in 2005. We developed an El Dorado County and City of Placerville active transportation connection study in 2015. We have a great El Dorado County bicycle travel map that we did in 2016 that's available on our website. We have the El Dorado County and City of Placerville active transportation plans in 2020. And the plans in 2020 were the first time that we actually were able to integrate not just bike project, cycling projects, but also pedestrian projects in the county. We've always had them in the city of Placerville, but it was the first time we included pedestrian investments in El Dorado County as well, in the unincorporated areas. And I may not have mentioned, but 87% of El Dorado County is unincorporated. We only have 2 incorporated cities, being the city of Placerville and the city of South Lake Tahoe. We've also developed a number of transit plans and studies. Done a transit marketing plan back in 2013. We've done a number of iterations of short and long range transit plans. Developed a park and ride master plan in 2017. and then a county line multimodal transit center study just in 2018, which is looking at identifying a multi-agency transit center in El Dorado Hills that would serve not only El Dorado Transit, but also some of the other transit operators in the Sacramento region, to include some kind of charging infrastructure or zero carbon kind of fueling infrastructure there at that transit center as well. So that kind of summarizes some of the planning efforts that we've done, focusing on GHG reduction. Now, what have we actually done as far as on the capital side? So over the last 10 years, EDCTC has programmed over 22 million in active transportation program projects, ranging from Class 1 bike lanes to Class 3 facilities. We've supported over $28 million in transit service since 2005. We've completed a total of 29.6 miles of Class 1 shared use path, 12 of which are, which you may know as the El Dorado Trail, which runs from the community of now runs from the community of Camino west all the way to El Dorado, and is on the existing rail bed that runs through the county. We've implemented FSP service as a TDM strategy. And we've constructed 21 miles of HOV lanes from Sunrise Boulevard all the way to Cameron Park. And you'll see here on the bottom of that slide, there's a table that also shows the proposed new facility mileage for each of those active transportation facilities. And then kind of in closing here, what do we have planned? We currently have a Caltrans Sustainable Community Planning grant to support an electric vehicle transition plan for El Dorado Transit. We recently submitted 6 ATP applications for a range of projects across the county for this current ATP cycle under SB1. We'll be deploying a US 50 pilot project next fall, which will actually, if you frequent Highway 50 or El Dorado, or excuse me, Apple Hill in the fall, you'll know that the delay at the 3 signals in Placerville can be significant at times. We're actually going to be doing a pilot project to flush the traffic and keep those signals green for an extended period and close off cross 50 access north and south, and only allow right in and right out access to see if a larger capital project would help reduce congestion in Placerville, meaning an elevated toll facility or some kind of managed lane facility on Highway 50. And we're also looking at in a very initial stage to have some kind of transit service from Placerville or from Sacramento into the South Lake base, into South Lake Tahoe, to provide more options on that corridor. So it kind of summarizes everything that we are doing, currently have done, and some of the challenges we face. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We have all of those plans and documents and many more that I mentioned on our website, which I have provided for you here as well.
Hey, Woody, it looks like Laura Fisher with SMUD has a question. Laura, would you like to unmute yourself?
Sure. Hey, Woody, that is an amazing presentation. I love all of the work that you've been doing and how granular it is. It's really interesting to see. My question for you, though, is how available is EV charging in El Dorado County?
And it's funny you should ask. I got a call from the Sacramento Bee this morning asking that very question based on the governor's recent executive order. So there are EV chargers here in Placerville, quite a few. There are both Tesla chargers and others at one of the shopping centers. We also have 6 chargers at the Raley's right here in Placerville. But once you head east of Placerville, there is very limited service. And as you know, the electrical grid, I'm sure you know that all very well, be coming from SMUD. The PG&E electrical grid is certainly in need of some modernization, and that will be a challenge in and of itself to provide that charging infrastructure east of Placerville all the way up into the Tahoe Basin. It's a challenging corridor. One example of how challenging it is that we've been trying to get something as simple as a rest stop with restrooms installed on Highway 50 east of Placerville for 3 decades. So.
Thanks, Woody. And I imagine that's due to the geography, the challenging geography.
Yeah, so the mountainous terrain, the limited right-of-way. There's also a lot of Native American sites along the corridor, all the way up to Echo Summit. So those are some of the challenges.
Got it. And it looks like Bill Mueller has a question. Bill, would you like to unmute yourself?
Sure. Woody, living here in Lotus, California, and love all the stuff that you're doing, especially seeing the Strava map. I have some new ideas about new routes, thanks to you.
All right.
Hey, really curious about if you were forced to say what the #1 transportation infrastructure would be for the county in the next couple of years, #1. If you had to put your finger on one project, what would it be? And then the second question is, would you have given us a different answer before COVID?
Interesting question. I'm glad none of my board members are on the call to call me out on that. So we have, one of the challenges in any county, but in El Dorado County as well, we are still trying to deliver traditional infrastructure projects. We have a number of interchange projects that have been in the books for decades. We have the Camino Safety Project on Highway 50. That's probably the top priority at this point that's being delivered now. The first phase of that, which will close the median barrier on Highway 50 from Still Meadows Road up to Upper Carson Road. There have been 9 fatalities in 5 years. So that's a safety project that's of utmost importance. But large kind of forward-thinking investment that's probably the most important is probably Highway 50 through Placerville. We just released a survey yesterday on our website to look at 4 alternatives that we brought back from decades ago to look at some kind of elevated toll facility, widening of Highway 50 through Placerville, things like that, to, as living in Lotus, as you know, to solve the issue of congestion on Highway 50 in Placerville. That's definitely the #1 priority. I think anybody would tell you that. And as far as pre-COVID, post-COVID, broadband expansion it's always been a priority, but now it's become a much higher priority with so many folks telecommuting and working from home. I can't even get high-speed internet in my office here. There's an AT&T pole 30 feet from my back window there, and it's around $60,000 just to bring the fiber to the building. So I think broadband's a much higher priority than it was pre-COVID. Bill, I'll turn the question back on you if you have a minute. Living in Lotus now, what are your priorities? As a constituent, I'd much rather hear from you as well.
Well, I have to tell you that driving through Placerville on any weekend, we generally have to plan for a 30 to 45 minute wait.
Yeah.
And many people may not fully appreciate just how much congestion there is on a weekend in a small mountain town. But it is a bit of a bottleneck, and it worries us when we think about forest fires and other, safety concerns. If we really had to get out, could we? It's a big worry. So I'm glad to hear that that's a priority, even though it's been on the books for a while.
Yeah, it's definitely a priority. We're looking at about a $350 million price tag, so it's going to take some careful, creative funding mechanisms to get that done. But one of the new challenges we're facing, well, Placerville congestion's always been an issue, but now we have Google Waze and other trip planning apps that are diverting people onto local neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods in Placerville, and that's a major concern as far as evacuation and fire danger and all that. So it's definitely the top priority for us.
And Woody, if you wouldn't mind stopping the screen share, we can go into our open discussion. So encourage folks to raise their hands with any questions they have for any of our speakers, Randy, Luke, or Woody. And I have sort of a follow-up first to you, Woody, which is, what sorts of air quality benefits are going to come from that project to speed traffic through Placerville?
So the initial work has not included any kind of GHG benefit analysis. So, we don't know yet what that benefit will be. But if we can get traffic to pass through traffic, we don't want to discourage patronage of Placerville businesses or El Dorado County businesses. But if we can get pass through traffic to go via a elevated toll facility or managed lane of some kind, that will certainly reduce, GHG on the corridor that we're experiencing now. One of the challenges that I face as a representative of all 26 rural counties is when I go to larger state meetings or meet with colleagues from urban areas, they kind of laugh me out of the room when I talk about congestion on Highway 50 in Placerville when they're from LA or from other areas in the state. But, it certainly will help move the needle for the Sacramento region if we can get that traffic moving through much more freely.
Well, I have a question for, I think maybe for all the speakers, but I understand that unpaved roads is a sort of an air quality issue in terms of some of the particulates and dust and other things that can come from unpaved roads. And it's actually apparently a significant source of these particulates. And so I guess I'm interested in how that goes into some of the work that you guys are doing, either in the transportation space or perhaps how that would affect Randy's work up in Yuba County.
So a quick comment on that. I can tell you what we did last year is we went out and borrowed a substantial amount of dollars to pave 70 miles of our roadway all in 1 year. We got a much better price. We did a tremendous amount more than we've probably done in 20 years. We did it in 1 year. We will pay for that money through our tax, our gas tax, but we borrowed it from the Yuba Water Agency. I also checked with the e-bank to see what their rates were. We got it for half that price. It's out of our own treasury. It worked very well. We're also going to potentially come up with a fund where the community, and I get a lot of requests from the community that says, well, what if we put money into this ourselves? Okay, if you can put up anywhere from 35 to 50% of the cost of the project out of your pocket, then I'm willing to go to our budget, pull money aside and pave a road. And I'm actually working on one right now. I have an individual that has the check and wants to get going on it. So I always come back to our constituents and say, help me on this. If I can work with you, you work with me, we have options, why don't we try it? And so I've had pretty good success with that. We'll see where it goes in the future. But once you do that pavement, then of course you save money for not maintaining that, putting money back into the gravel and the paved. We do it right, you do it right the first time, and it's beneficial to everybody.
Adrian, we've worked with El Dorado County DOT to secure some federal lands access program funding to pave some of the unpaved routes going into the federal lands in El Dorado County. There's a huge percentage of the county that's in federal ownership, so we've been fairly successful up in the Crystal Range getting a lot of those roads paved. So we've done a little bit of that, but that's a real challenging. We're still trying to maintain the asphalt that we have, let alone add more asphalt to the maintenance schedule.
Adrian, I'll just add, I don't know if you can hear me better now or not.
Yes, I can.
Okay. For Placer County, I think, the worry for us is that our roads are so heavily traveled that that we just don't have enough funding. Even with SB1, before the gas tax was implemented, we covered about 1/3 of the cost of our maintenance. SB1 got us to maybe about 2/3 of what we need to really maintain our roads. So we're still kind of missing that kind of 1/3 component. And we've looked at sales tax measures and other funding components, but really, I think the worry is that we won't be able to maintain all our roads, so we'll have to let some of them deteriorate to gravel, and so that's a big concern of ours. And I think Supervisor Fletcher mentioned that about just keeping up with the maintenance is a big concern for our county and our local agencies.
Got it. So I have another question. This is probably more for Randy than anyone, but I encourage our air pollution control officers who are on the call to get engaged in this question if they'd like. But it's around biomass utilization. I know, Randy, you mentioned that there were some efforts underway to, I guess, establish a biomass plant by way of Yuba Water Agency, and I know there's biomass plant in Lincoln, I believe, in Placer County. But with both Bill Mueller and I and some others were on a call earlier today where they talked about the emissions that come from both pile burning that folks do in rural areas versus just decomposition, letting the biomass sit there and decompose, versus biomass to energy. And I was surprised to see that the fewest emissions, that actually you produce fewer emissions by doing biomass to energy than letting the biomass sit and decompose naturally. There are fewer emissions that come from that process. And of course, by far, the most emissions come from pile burning, which you don't want to do. So I guess I'm curious to hear what folks are sort of, current efforts in the way of biomass are here in the region, maybe starting with you, Randy.
So through Camptonville, they started about 10 years ago trying to put a project together. It has not been easy. There have been roadblocks all the way from day one. It continues to find roadblocks. We're looking at an actual budget that, if we're fortunate, you might be able to break even, but what it looks like on paper is a money loser. It's hard to get people engaged when you know you're going to lose money. And then who's going to run the operation? We're very supportive through the water agency to support this operation and even potentially subsidize it. But even those dollars are probably not adequate to handle this situation. I wish I had a better solution. I can tell you, if we had more cooperation from the players involved in this, including the state of California and PG&E particularly, we would make more leeway. We'd get somewhere, but we just continue to battle this. I'll encourage anyone that's thinking about a biomass is come back and talk with our general manager at the water agency and Camptonville Community Partnership, Kathy LeBlanc. I'll connect anybody that would like to. We're more than happy to have a Zoom meeting, talk to you about some of the issues that we've continued to battle with. But personally, I like it, and we're trying to support it, but it's not an easy project to move forward.
Yeah, this is Chris at Feather River. I spent a lot of time in Mendocino County in a prior life, and the challenges to biomass, and sorry, my camera went blurry, by the way, it does this from time to time. The challenges to biomass really are twofold, and neither of them is, none of them are air quality related. It's the technology is there to do it relatively cleanly. It's really about cost and economics, and particularly the economics of bringing the stuff out of the forest to burn it. Having all those trucks go in and haul it out is really expensive. And the other issue is political. And that's just, people don't want it in their neighborhood. They have certain feelings about forests. They have feelings about using forests to generate power. And, we tried to have a collaborative group in Mendocino County for about a decade to work on this. And always there was a new group that would show up that had a different opinion. And no matter how much outreach you did, there was always somebody who felt that they were left out and not part of the conversation. So it's a tough nut to crack. And as long as the PUC isn't letting anyone make money doing biomass, and the tax credits aren't there like they are for solar, I don't think it's really going to go very far.
Thanks, Chris.
Adrian, I'll just add, El Dorado County was trying to get a biomass site up and running on the existing, or the old site of the Camino Mill, which was an old industrial site, which was, seemed to be a perfect location for something like that. And it also, even with that great location, it still wasn't financially feasible for them to pull it together.
Thank you for that. I just wanted to call out a couple of things that came up in the chat that maybe just to make sure people are seeing it. So Dave Johnston, Air Pollution Control Officer for El Dorado County, just mentioned that the AQMD has installed 60 EVSEs, which is EV supply equipment, or AKA chargers, across the county, and then 60 more have been publicly funded. Sounds like there's more in the pipeline there. Seaver shared the Sierra Business Council's really great report on biomass, so be sure to check that out. And then Ralph, Bree asked for Luke's presentation. Luke, if you're able to share that with me, I can share it out to all the participants here.
Sure, I can send you a copy.
Perfect, thanks. And then Ralph just pointed out that the Energy Commission actually funded a demonstration project in Auburn around wood and aerobic digestion to methane for truck fuel, which is pretty cool. Does anybody have a quick point on that or know anything about that? And if not, okay then. Well, in any case, very much appreciate everyone's participation today. Want to be mindful of time. We'll, absolutely be continuing this conversation. I learned a lot, and want to thank everybody for participating today. So also thank you to Jesse Flores, Valley Vision's newest project associate, for doing a great job on the back end. Thank you to our fantastic lineup of expert speakers. You guys were fantastic. And of course to the Cleaner Air Partnership's generous contributors for sponsoring the virtual luncheon. We actually have an exit poll of sorts to help us inform some future luncheon programming. So Jesse, do you want to launch the final poll? All right. So basically, which content area discussed today would you like to learn more about? Air Quality 101, the basics, physical geography and air pollution, rural transportation, forest and watershed management, wildfire resilience. It looks like wildfire followed by rural transportation are sort of the biggest selections here. We'll leave that going for another 5 or 8 seconds. And then Jesse, you can close the poll now and share the results. Cool. So there are the results. Wildfire resilience took it, but honestly, there's a lot of interest, I think, across all these areas for some more information. So Cleaner Air Partnership will work to continue to deliver great and helpful information in all of these areas. So cool. Recording of this webinar is going to be available on Valley Vision's YouTube channel within 72 hours. I will send you all a link to it via email early next week. You'll also be getting a 1-minute evaluation of this luncheon, so you can provide additional feedback as well as give us ideas for future luncheon topics beyond what the poll that was just shared. So in closing, I hope you enjoy your Friday afternoon. California Clean Air Day is coming up on October 7th. You can go to cleanairday.org for more info and to get involved in that effort. And you can always keep up with Valley Vision at valleyvision.org. So from all of us at the Cleaner Air Partnership, thank you, and enjoy a bluer sky this weekend. Thanks.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks, everyone.